The Language of Survival, Shunkun no Gengo, Episode 5, The Hunt That Chose Him.第 5話,彼を選んだ 3 days after the T-Rex had stood at the eastern tree line and chosen its target, the tribe proposed a joint hunt. Not in English, not in any language the Parkers had yet learnt to pass, but the proposal arrived with the clarity that certain communications carry when they are built from gesture and demonstration, and the specific patient quality of someone who has decided that the idea they are conveying is important enough to convey without the shortcut of shared language. The cave woman brought it to Mary. She came to the main fire in the early morning and crouched beside it with a section of bark that had been worked into a flat surface, the drawing medium the two of them had been using since the territory map session. She drew the hunting formation the tribe used, a spread, flanking configuration with specific position assignments indicated by marks for each hunter. Then she drew 12 smaller figures alongside the larger tribe marks. She looked at Mary. "Come with us." Mary studied the drawing. Then she looked at the cave woman, at the spear she carried with the casual, functional mastery of someone for whom it was as natural an extension of the body as a hand, at the tribe, assembled for the day's morning tasks with the quiet, organised efficiency that had characterised every collective activity the Parkers had observed, at the young man who was watching the exchange from across the fire with the particular, focused attention that now accompanied every communication he witnessed between the two groups. She looked at Amin. He was standing at the fire's edge, still, balanced, the alpha aura radiating from his posture with the same effortless consistency it always radiated. Not louder in the morning, not softer, simply present the way gravity was present, continuous and unannounced. He gave her the smallest nod. Mary looked at the cave woman. She put her finger on the drawing, on the 12 smaller figures the cave woman had added. "We come," she said. Act 1, the private Japanese lesson. Before dawn. Amin had moved the family before the tribe's morning fires were fully stoked. The window was narrow. The overlap between the latest sleepers among the tribe waking and the earliest risers beginning their morning tasks was approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which the Parker family's departure to the water source at the territory's northern edge would appear to any watching eye as the routine water gathering that had established itself as a morning constant. The lesson happened at the stream. Mary, Cassandra, and Princess gathered water. Prince and the 4 brothers ostensibly checked the northern boundary stones. Rashim, who had discovered that talking while performing physical tasks was his most effective combination for language retention, narrated his stone-checking process in low Japanese while his hands did something else entirely. Amir and Amira sat against the largest streamside tree, bark and sharpened flint between them, working through the Japanese writing system with the specific focused intensity of 2 people who processed everything through the application of rigour rather than instinct. Amin moved between them all. "Jinri ha isho ni huri o suru," he said. "Kyu wa isho ni kari o suru." "Today we hunt together." The family repeated it. "This is important," he continued, still in Japanese, the language of private family communication having settled into a specific register of his voice that was different from both his English and his silence. "When we are in the jungle, I will use Japanese to coordinate our positions. The tribe will hear sounds. They will not understand them. They must not associate the sounds with language. So when I use Japanese commands today, I will use them as quietly as the situation allows. Your responses will be equally quiet." "What if the situation doesn't allow quiet?" Rashim asked. "In Japanese. Imperfect, the structure rough, but functional." "Then we use what we have," Amin said, "and we accept that the tribe may hear something they cannot pass. An unknown sound in a hunting context will register as a signal they don't have the key for, not as a second language. The key is consistency. They must always see English from us in every public exchange." Prince Parker said, "You're asking us to manage 2 languages simultaneously in a combat situation." "Yes," Amin said. "That's not simple." "No," Amin agreed. "That's why we practice it now." Cassandra had been listening with her eyes on the stream, the posture she used when she was processing rather than participating, which was different from the posture she used when she was absent. She looked up. "In an emergency," she said, "the Japanese commands override everything. If you say Nigero, we move. No processing, no evaluation, no waiting for context." "Yes," Amin said. "And if I say it?" she asked. He looked at her. "Same," he said. The family absorbed this. Mary, who had been filling the vessel at the stream's edge, stood and looked at Amin across the water. "Teach me something I don't know yet," she said. In Japanese, her pronunciation clean, the intonation falling naturally in the patterns that had taken other family members twice as long to find. "Something we might need today." Amin was quiet for a moment. Then, "Daichifuse," he said. "Machibuse. Ambush." "Daichifuse," Mary repeated. "Bao wei," he said. "Hoi, encirclement. Bao wei. Yenkifukuru," he said. "Hekitsukuru. Draw them in!" Mary repeated it. She said it twice. On the second production, the specific, precise meaning of the word arrived in her expression, not as analysis, but as recognition. The particular sound that a word makes when it stops being a sequence of phonemes and becomes a concept that the mind has integrated. She looked at Amin. I understand what today might require. He held her gaze. Then the first morning light reached the stream, and they carried the water back. The English lesson, hunt preparation to public, the tribe assembled at, the mind fire with a different quality of energy than the usual morning lesson. Purpose. The specific, focused purposefulness of people who had agreed to do something and were now aligning their internal states with the doing of it. The hunting party was visible, 12 of the tribe's most experienced adult hunters, their tools prepared, their movement already oriented toward the day's task. The cave woman was among them, organising the departure sequence with the efficient, quiet authority she brought to everything. Mary stood at the fire's centre. Hunt, she said. She had chosen this word specifically for this morning. Not as a new vocabulary item, but as a consolidation of what the tribe had been building toward. The English word for the activity they were all about to do together. Shared vocabulary for a shared task. Hunt, the young man said immediately. His English had developed over the past days into something that had its own momentum, each lesson building on the previous, one with the compounding speed of a learner whose cognitive investment had reached the point where the language was generating itself rather than being assembled. Hunt, several other tribe members said. The older man, the one who had attended lessons with the deliberate commitment of someone who understood the value of what was being transferred, even if the speed of his acquisition was different from the young man's, produced it with the specific gravity of someone saying a word for the first time in a context that had raised its stakes. Together, Mary said, pointing between the tribe and the Parker family. Together, the young man said. He pointed between his people and the Parkers. Together, he said again, using the word as it was meant to be used, not repeating it for the lesson but applying it to describe the actual reality of this morning. The cave woman, who had been observing the lesson exchange from her preparation position, looked at Mary. She made the flat palm gesture, the downward press that meant hide, now go still, then modified it, adding a forward sweep that was new, a gesture the Parkers had not seen before. What does that mean? Princess asked quietly to Amir beside her. Based on context and the directional component, Amir said at the same quiet volume, I would estimate it means something like move forward together, an advanced signal. Interesting. She's beginning to code switch between her gestural system and the English vocabulary. She's building a hybrid. Tell Mum, Princess said. Amir moved to Mary. He described what he had observed in 3 sentences. Precise, efficient, the minimum language necessary to transfer the maximum relevant information. Mary listened. Then she looked at the cave woman. She made the gesture, the flat palm forward sweep, and said, Advance! The cave woman's eyes held the word. Advance, she said. Onevor. English, that the cave woman brought to everything she chose to do. Not casual, not automatic, but chosen. Amira, at the fire's outer edge, was watching the feathered dinosaur. The small creature had been close to Mary since the morning, not underfoot, not interfering, but maintaining the specific radius it had established as its preferred distance from the woman who had become its fixed point. It had been watching the hunt preparation with the alert attention of a creature that was reading the group's energy state and adjusting its own accordingly. It's going to try to come with us, Amira said. Flat. Observational. Princess was beside her. Probably. That's either useful or a problem. It depends on how it behaves in the jungle. It's a feathered dinosaur that lives in the jungle. It knows the jungle better than we do. Princess considered this. That's actually a reasonable point. I know it's a reasonable point, Amira said. I make reasonable points. Prince Parker had positioned himself at the assembly's edge, not behind Mary this morning, but to the side, from which position he was conducting a visual assessment of the hunt formation the tribe was organising. He said, to no one in particular but in the direction of Rashim beside him, the flanking spread they're using is sensible for driving prey but creatis. Gaps in the left approach angler. Rashim, who had been talking to his sons in low Japanese, practising, surfaced from the lesson to register what Prince had said. Is that useful right now, or are you just observing? He asked. Everything I say is useful, Prince said. That's impressive since you say so much. Prince turned and looked at his brother with the expression that served, across the Parker family's entire history, as the response to Rashim's particular brand of commentary when Prince had elected not to dignify it verbally. Rashim grinned. Nysa Parker, who had been watching this, said nothing, but something in the absolute stillness he maintained had the quality, to anyone who knew him, of controlled amusement. Act 2. The bilingual hunt. The formation moved into the jungle at mid-morning. The cave woman led, as she always led, the specific, water-through-rock efficiency of someone who had been moving through this particular jungle for her entire life, and for whom every tree, every root system, every sound deflection pattern of the canopy was a familiar text. Behind her, the hunting party arranged itself, with the practised ease of people executing a familiar protocol. 4 flankers on the spread, 3 trackers at centre, 5 as the driving formation that would move prey toward the flankers of positions. The Parkers integrated, not perfectly, not with the seamless coherence they would have managed if this had been a formation they had developed together, but with the adaptive competence of people who had been training for weeks in the underlying principles that all coordinated movement shared, and who could read a formation's logic even when they hadn't designed it. Amin read the formation immediately. He positioned himself at the left centre, the gap Prince had identified in the assembly, the angle that the tribe's spread left partially uncovered, not because he had been assigned this position, because the gap existed and he was the person in the group best suited to address it. And addressing it required no discussion. Mary walked at the formation's interior, not at the protected centre of the defensive formations, where Amin and Cassandra typically placed her, but the moving centre of an advancing hunt line, from which position the full formation was visible in both directions, and from which position a hunt's leadership was most naturally exercised. The cave woman had positioned her there, not with instruction, with the specific, deliberate placement of someone who understood instinctively where the person who held the formation's purpose should stand. Cassandra moved beside Mary, not ahead of her, not in the forward guard position that had characterized the defensive formations. Beside her, the co-protagonist's position in a moving formation, present, aware, calibrated to the direction of travel and the changing demands of the jungle's terrain. Princess was on Mary's other side. Amir walked behind, reading the trail behind them, cross-referencing the tracks they were following with the circuit model he had been building for days, watching for the environmental signatures that preceded a predator encounter in the specific way that an analytical mind watches for patterns. Continuously, quietly, several steps ahead of the moment. The 4 brothers were at the flanks, 2 left, 2 right, moving in the silent synchronization that made them, in any formation they occupied, function like a single entity with 4 independent points of contact. Rashim was, as he always was, somewhere between positions, creating the specific contribution that unpredictability makes in any coordinated system, the element that the system's geometry could not fully account for, and that therefore complicated any adversarial analysis of the group. Prince Parker walked at the rear. He had not been asked to walk at the rear. He had assessed the formation, identified the rear as the position most requiring someone who could maintain complete situational awareness of the full group, while also managing any contact from behind, and placed himself there without announcement. It was the right call. He would not say so, but it was. The feathered dinosaur walked beside Mary. It had followed her from the territory's edge, with the settled, decided quality of something that had made its determination and was not interested in discussing it. The cave woman had glanced at the small creature once, assessing, and then returned her attention to the trail ahead. Whatever conclusion she had reached about its presence was apparently one that fell within the range of acceptable variables. The hunt tracked for the first 30 minutes in silence. Not the tense silence of a group hiding from something, the working silence of a group coordinating towards something, the specific concentrated quiet of people whose attention was fully occupied with reading the environment and whose respect for the task had temporarily redistributed their processing capacity away from conversation. The jungle was different from its territory edge self, denser, the canopy closing above them into a continuous roof that filtered the morning light into something layered and directional, shafts arriving at angles that shifted as the formation moved, creating the visual impression of constant environmental change, even when the path was relatively straight. The sounds were different too. The bird calls, the insect rhythms, the distant percussion of large animals moving somewhere in the middle distance. All of it more present and more specific than the background register the territory's open clearing produced. Mary walked through it with her attention wide. She was reading the jungle the way she had learned to read every space she entered, receiving the total picture, letting each component arrive without demanding that any part resolve before the others were ready. She was looking for nothing specific. She was receiving everything. The cave woman stopped. One hand up, flat palm, fingers together. The stop signal. The entire formation stopped, not in sequence, with the slight ripple of people processing a command at different speeds. All at once, the bilingual formation had absorbed the cave woman's gestural system deeply enough that her signals now had the same instant response as spoken commands. She crouched, the trail. Something in the trail, a specific disturbance in the soft earth that her long expertise could read with the same fluency that Amir read the architecture of a sentence. She drew in the earth beside the disturbance, quickly, efficiently. The outline of a large animal's foot, 4-toed, clawed. She held up 3 fingers, 3 of them. Mary looked at the drawing, at the 3 fingers, at the direction the cave woman was indicating, ahead and slightly left, into the denser vegetation where the trail curved around a limestone formation. She looked at Amin. He was already reading the direction the cave woman had indicated. His weight had shifted, fractionally, in the way that his weight shifted when his body was moving from general readiness into specific readiness. Not dramatic, not visible to someone who wasn't watching for it. But Mari was watching for it, and the feathered dinosaur had pressed against her leg. Something is there. The cave woman reorganized the formation. She did it through a sequence of gestures, each one specific, each one building on the shared gestural vocabulary that the Parkers and the tribe had been developing together over the past days. 4 hunters to the left flank, 3 to the right, the driving formation to advance directly while the flankers moved to cut off the escape routes. Mary watched the gestures. She turned to the Parkers. Left, she said in English, directing Princess and Amir and Nisa to the left flank alongside 4 tribe hunters. Right, she said, directing the 3 remaining brothers and 2 tribe hunters to the right. Rashim, centre with me. Amin. She looked at him. He was already positioned at the left centre, the gap that would be created when the flankers spread and the driving formation advanced, and the left centre became the hinge point around which the prey would attempt to turn. She had not told him to stand there. He had read the geometry of what was coming and gone to the place that needed him. She said nothing. He said nothing. They were in the jungle, in a prehistoric world, 1,000 millennia before the one they had known, and the language between them did not require words any more than it ever had. The formation advanced, 40 metres, 50, the limestone formation coming into view through the vegetation, its rough, pale face rising above the jungle floor, the curve of the trail bringing the group around its left side. The target was visible. A large herbivore, 4-legged, heavy, browsing at the base of a fern cluster 40 metres beyond the limestone's far edge. The kind of animal whose size and docility made it the tribe's preferred hunt target, large enough to feed the settlement for days, slow enough to be manageable, accustomed to the presence of other large creatures in a way that made a patient, disciplined approach possible. The tribe's hunters moved with the specific, total economy of people for whom this sequence was as natural as breathing. The flankers were already spreading. The driving formation was beginning its slow, careful advance from directly behind the target. Amin signalled the Parkers, not with a word, with his position, a fractional adjustment of his stance that the family had learned to read, the way they had learned to read everything about him, as information, precise and sufficient. Holle, and the predators came from above. Not the T-Rex, not the ground-shaking, canopy-displacing announcement of the apex predator's arrival. Something different, the specific, controlled, sudden quality of an ambush. 3 large shapes dropping from the limestone formation's upper ledges where they had been motionless, reading the approach of the hunt formation from their elevated position, waiting for the moment when the hunting party's attention was fully committed to its prey, and its back was turned to the height, advantage the limestone provided. Allosaurus, 3 of them, smaller than the T-Rex but built for exactly this, the lateral speed, the coordinated attack pattern of a pack predator whose intelligence was not the individual brilliance of the T-Rex, but the distributed, synchronized intelligence of animals that had been hunting together long enough to function as a single organism with 3 bodies. They landed. The impact of their landing sent shockwaves through the soft jungle floor. 3 separate concussive impacts, arriving within half a second of each other, that the formation felt through their feet before their eyes had fully processed what had arrived. The herbivore bolted, the tribe reacted, the Parkers were already in formation, the Allosaurus scanned. This was not a dramatic, cinematic scanning, not the slow, deliberate rotation of the T-Rex's enormous skull. It was fast, the rapid predatory efficiency of animals whose survival had always depended on identifying the correct target before committing to a charge. The pack's lead predator, the largest of the 3, scanned the formation. Its eyes moved across the assembled group with the specific biological logic of a predator threat assessment. The tribe hunters, large, loud, already in defensive posture, the tribal spears up and presenting. Notable. Accounted for. Prince Parker, commanding the rear, projecting the authority of someone who expected to be engaged. High energy, registered. Cassandra Brown, beside Mary, posture carrying the specific quality of advanced marginal trainee, filed the Vorbrovers of formation type synchronized, the specific read of a unit that moved as one. Complex target, noted. Rashim Parker, between positions, energy high, unpredictable, uncontained variable. Amir, a calculating position, watching from the perimeter. Princess, mid-formation, steady. Mary Parker, plus interior centre, surrounded, protected. The feathered dinosaur, close to Mary, visible, small, and then... The lead Allosaurus's eyes stopped. On Amin Parker. The same thing that had happened with the raptors in episode 1. With the Spinosaurus, with the T-Rex on 4 separate nights. The specific biological response that the alpha aura produced in every predator that scanned the formation. The lock of attention that happened before conscious choice could modify it. Because it was not a conscious choice. It was an instinct responding to information that the body processed faster than the mind. Posture, balance, breathing, stillness. The complete, total readiness of something that had moved through more dangerous situations than this one and had always come out standing. The lead Allosaurus's pupils contracted. That one, the only real threat. It turned its full attention to Amin Parker. The 2 flanking Allosaurus read the lead predator's focus and adjusted their own. The distributed intelligence of the pack, redistributing itself around the leader's threat assessment. the flankers moving to positions that would allow a coordinated three-point approach to the single target the lead had identified. The tribe saw the predator's eyes lock on the smallest person in the formation. The young man, who had been positioned in the center drive group, close enough to watch, saw it too. He did not understand it, but he registered it with the complete, total attention he brought to everything. The predators chose the small one. Why? Mary saw it before the Allosaurus charged. She saw the lead predator's weight shift, the subtle redistribution of mass that preceded a committed directional movement in any large creature. She saw the flank predators adjusting, covering the angles. She saw the three-point approach geometry assembling itself. She saw that all of it was aimed at Amin. "Negero," she said, in Japanese, quietly. To the family, not the tribe, not the space, generally. The specific, private channel. Run. Not literally. Not away from the situation, not toward the caves. The family had trained this word to mean something more nuanced than its direct translation. Move, now, to the next position, the correct position, without waiting for more instruction. The Parkers moved. Cassandra went left, filling the gap that Amin's repositioning would create, covering the angle the left flank Allosaurus was approaching from. Princess went right, the mirror position, the right flank angle. Rashim expanded his orbit, widening the unpredictable perimeter that made him difficult to factor into any adversarial calculation. The four brothers rotated, their formation opening from a cluster to a spread that covered a wider arc of the approach vectors. Amir went to the position behind and above, the elevated calculation point from which he could read the three predators' movement patterns simultaneously, and produce the observations that would allow the formation to respond rather than react. And Amin Parker went to the center. Not the protected center, the open center. The position between the Parkers and the approaching Allosaurus pack. The gap between the predator's target and everything the predators would have to come through to reach it. He did not move dramatically. He simply walked, the specific, unhurried pace of someone going to a place where they needed to be. And something in that pace, in the absolute lack of urgency in the movement of someone who was deliberately positioning himself between three large apex predators, and the people he was protecting, produced the specific quality of presence that had always been the Alpha Aura's most precise expression. "I see you coming! I am already here! Come!" The lead Allosaurus charged. It came at a speed that the formation's jungle environment compressed, the vegetation limiting the run-up, concentrating the animal's mass into a tight, powerful burst rather than the full field acceleration it would have achieved in open terrain. 40 feet of coordinated predatory force, closing the distance between its launch point and Amin Parker, with the specific velocity of something that had done this many times and had decided, with the full commitment that predators give their best strike, that this was the moment. Amin did not move until the Allosaurus was 15 feet away. Then he moved with the economy that had no equivalent in the natural world, not the reactive scramble of something caught by surprise, not the explosive leap of something overcompensating for late awareness, but the precise, minimal movement of someone who had read the charge's trajectory 40 feet out and had been waiting, specifically and exactly, for the moment when the predator was committed and the redirect was most effective, the Tai Sabaki, 2 inches offline. The Allosaurus's head passed through the space where he had been with the massive, displaced air force of something that had put everything into its strike. His hands found the side of the passing jaw, the rotational redirect, the same physics, the same principle, the same application of the opponent's force against its own momentum that he had executed on the Spinosaurus in Episode 1 and the T-Rex in Episode 2, landed with the same clean, devastating efficiency that it always landed with. The Allosaurus's head went sideways. The body followed. It hit the limestone formation with a concussive impact that sent pieces of ancient, rock scattering across the jungle floor. It was not down. It was not done. But it was recalibrating. And recalibration took time. And time was what the formation needed. The left flank Allosaurus came at Cassandra. She had read it coming. She had positioned herself at the left angle not because she had been told to, but because she had read the 3 predator geometry the moment the formation's threat assessment completed and had understood, before the words had assembled themselves, that the left flank was where she needed to be. The Allosaurus committed to a lateral strike, its approach vector designed to sweep anything in its path sideways, rather than overrun it. Cassandra dropped. Below the sweep, the kind of drop that required the specific, practiced relationship with gravity that weeks of Aikido training had built. Not falling, not stumbling, but going deliberately low with the full control of someone whose body knew exactly where it was in space at every moment of the movement. She came up inside the predator's reach, the Wing Chun chain punches, rapid, centerline tracking delivered to the softer area below the predator's ribcage, with the accumulated force of someone who had been told by her father since training began that it was not the power of a single strike that mattered, but the rate and placement of the continuous stream. She drove the Allosaurus back 3 steps, not down, not defeated, but back and off its charge line, and recalculating. "Good," she heard. from behind her, in Japanese, quiet enough to carry only to her. She did not look back. She kept her eyes on the left flank predator. She was his successor, she knew. The right flank Allosaurus went for the tribe, specifically for the cluster of 3 hunters who had been on the right flank of the drive formation, and who, in the chaos of the pack's landing, had been caught mid-redistribution between their hunting positions and the defensive formation they were trying to assemble. Princess Parker was already there. She moved with the anchoring speed that had always been her specific gift. Not the explosive burst of a fetor, but the set-led, decisive arrival of Sommillon Hoplants, themselves in a position, and becomes, in that position, a fact that the space has to account for. She stepped into the right flank predator's path, not to meet it directly, not to attempt the kind of head-on confrontation that the size difference made impossible, but to present it with the specific read that her posture communicated. There is someone here, someone who has decided to be here. Your approach runs through this person. The right flank? Allosaurus slowed, not stopped, but slowed. The involuntary deceleration of a predator that has encountered a variable it did not factor and is running a rapid assessment of whether the cost of continuing the charge has changed. The cave woman came from the right. She drove her spear at the predator's flank, not a disabling strike, not a direct attack on its vitals, a contact, a communication. This territory has people who will not move. The Allosaurus turned. Princess was already repositioning, not retreating, circling, using the same Aikido principle that governed everything she had been taught. You do not stand in the path of force. You let the force commit, and then you are somewhere else. And somewhere else is where you need to be. The right flank predator found itself engaged with both Princess and the cave woman simultaneously. From angles that required it to attend to 2 separate points of contact rather than one, it had not planned for this. Amir, from his elevated position behind a root formation, said, "The leader's back up. It is going to go for Amin again." He said it in English, loudly enough for the Parkers to hear, quietly enough that the tribe hunters in the middle of the engagement heard it as background noise rather than directed communication. Mary heard it. She looked at the lead Allosaurus, now on its feet, head shaking, recalibrating, its eyes already finding Amin again with the same biological lock that had started the engagement. She made a decision. "Rashim," she said. He was already looking at her. "Draw it," she said. "Not to Amin, to the left." Rashim Parker looked at the lead Allosaurus. He looked at the left, where the limestone formation's far edge created a natural corridor between 2 dense sections of jungle that, if the Allosaurus's attention could be pulled in that direction, would send it toward terrain that complicated its movement without putting any of the formation in its direct path. He understood. He moved. Rashim Parker doing what Rashim Parker did when given open space and a purpose. He appeared from 3 different positions in the space of 15 seconds, each appearance at a different angle, each one producing the specific quality of attention-demanding unpredictability that made him the wild card of the formation. He made enough noise from enough directions to create the impression of multiple threats converging from the left. The lead Allosaurus's attention broke from Amin, fractionally, for 3 seconds. Enough! Amin was already moving. He came from the right, the angle the lead predator had turned away from. And the technique was not the redirect of the charge. The charge had ended. What the lead Allosaurus was doing now was standing, assessing, being drawn by Rashim's unpredictable movement. Standing was different physics. Amin applied the Mabu to a standing target, the horse stance driving upward and forward through the full connection of feet to earth, the entire kinetic chain of Amin Parker's body, delivering concentrated force to the precise anatomical point that Akane had spent years teaching him to find, the pressure point at the junction of the jow's lower hinge, where the correct application of force produced not injury but the specific neurological disruption of a stunned nervous system. The lead Allosaurus reeled, 1 step backward, 2, its head shaking with the rapid, confused movement of something that has received information it does not know how to process. It was not down. But for 5 seconds, it was not anything else either. The 4 brothers used those 5 seconds. Nisa, Nishim, Nimir, Shahim. In their formation, from 4 separate approach angles, creating the rotating pressure pattern that they had developed into the formation's most versatile tool. Not attacking the lead predator individually. Creating a distributed wall of contact that required it to account for 4 separate points simultaneously. The same overwhelming coordination that had been applied to the Carnotaurus and the Raptors and the cavemen, now applied with the weeks of training that had made the 4 of them faster, more precise, more automatic in their execution. The lead Allosaurus turned, left, right, trying to find the angle that cleared the distributed engagement. There wasn't one. And from behind it, from the direction of the limestone formation, it heard the 2 flanking Allosaurus beginning their own disengagement sounds. Princess and the cave woman had driven the right flank predator to the limestone's edge. Cassandra had pushed the left flank predator back into the dense vegetation where its lateral mobility was reduced. The pack's coordinated intelligence, which had been its primary advantage, was receiving fragmented information from 3 separate engagement points that were all producing the same result. Costly. The lead predator made the calculation. It looked at the formation, at the tribe, at the 12 smaller beings who had distributed themselves through the jungle in a configuration that had, in the space of 4 minutes, neutralized a 3-predator coordinated pack attack without providing any of the 3 predators with a clear, cost-worthy attack path. It looked at Amin Parker, who was standing in the Marbu, still, balanced. The alpha aura exactly what it had been when the engagement started. Unchanged, unwavering, simply continuous. The lead Allosaurus held the look for 2 seconds, then it withdrew. Its 2 pack members followed, not in panic, not in rout, but in the deliberate, organised withdrawal of animals that had reached a decision, moving back toward the limestone formation's far side, into the deeper jungle, taking their assessment with them. The jungle absorbed them. Silence. Mary Parker stood in the clearing that the engagement had created. She looked at her family, at each of them, checking, the way she always checked, with the total, synthesizing attention that registered the condition of each person in the space of a sweep. Everyone was standing. The tribe's hunters, 4 of whom had been caught in the engagement's outer edges, were also standing. The cave woman was at the formation's right, lowering her spear with the specific, controlled release of someone returning from maximum readiness. The herbivore was long gone. The hunt, in the conventional sense, had not succeeded. But something else had. The young man was standing 20 feet away. He had been in the drive formation when the Allosaurus pack landed. He had been close enough to watch the entire engagement, from the predator's initial scan, through the moment their eyes had locked on Amin, through the 4-minute coordinated response that had driven all 3 of them into withdrawal. He was looking at Amin Parker. His expression had the quality of someone revising something. Not dramatically, not the shock of someone whose entire understanding of the world has been overturned, but the specific, thoughtful revision of someone whose existing model has received new information and is adjusting accordingly. He had watched the predators scan the formation. He had watched them pass over Prince Parker, who was the most visually commanding person in the group, had watched them pass over the 4 brothers, who were the most physically formidable in aggregate, had watched them pass over the tribe's most experienced hunters, who were the ones the young man himself would have identified as the primary threats, had watched them lock onto the small, quiet, still man at the formation centre. He had watched everything that followed. He walked to Mary. He stopped beside her. He looked at Amin. Then he said something in his own language, something the Parkers could not pass, but that landed in the space of the gathering with the quality of a word that had weight. Not English, not Japanese, his own language, which was not yet a language the Parkers were being taught, but which was, like all languages, a window into something true. Mary looked at him. She could not answer the word's content. She could answer its quality. She looked at Amin. Yes, she said simply. Whatever the young man had said, whatever word in his language he had produced for what he had just witnessed, yes was the correct response. He nodded, slowly, the way he nodded when something important had been confirmed. Act 3, the aftermath and the return. The return to the territory was quieter than the hunt's departure had been. Not the tense quiet of people processing a narrow escape. The grounded quiet of people who had done something together and were carrying it, in their shared silence, the way experience is carried before it has been fully understood. The cave woman walked beside Mary for the first time since they had arrived at her people's territory. Not in front, beside. The specific, deliberate adjustment of position that communicated something in the physical language that bodies spoke before words existed. We are at the same level. We walk together. Mary nodded his head. She did not make it in a table. She simply walked at the cave woman's pace, through the jungle, back toward the territory, the feathered dinosaur between them at the specific, settled distance it had maintained since the morning's departure. Behind them, the formation followed. Prince Parker, at the rear, walked with his characteristic, demanding precision. His expression was, as it was after any engagement that had resolved favourably through coordinated action, complicated. Not pleased, exactly. Prince Parker's relationship with being pleased was always complicated by his awareness of what could have been better. But something in it had settled, in the way that the expression of someone who has watched something work the way it was supposed to work, settles. Rashim fell into step beside his sons. He was talking. About the engagement. What had happened? What had worked? The specific moment when the lead Allosaurus had broken its lock on Amin because of the distraction Rashim had created, from 3 angles, in 15 seconds. I was everywhere, he said. I was genuinely everywhere. Did you see? Left, then right, then from above the root. I don't know how I did it either, it just happened, but the point is, Baba, Nisa said. Yes? We were there. Rashim looked at his oldest son. You were all there, he agreed. That's the point. That's exactly the point. Nisa said nothing, but he walked slightly closer to his father. At the territory's edge, where the jungle met the settlement's cleared ground, the cave woman stopped. She looked back at the jungle, at the direction they had come from. She made a gesture, new, something the Parkers had not seen before. Both hands, palms facing each other, fingers interweaving briefly and then releasing. She looked at Mary. She looked at the settlement. What we did in there, that comes back with us. Mary held the gesture in her memory. She did not know its precise meaning. She understood its direction. She put her hand on the cave woman's arm, briefly. the same quality of contact the cave woman had offered her on the morning of the T-Rex aftermath. The cave woman looked at her hand, then at Mary's face. She nodded. They walked into the territory. The evening English lesson, the fire circle assembled with the specific energy of a group that had shared an experience and wanted to build language for it. Mary sat at the centre. The young man was across from her. The tribe's hunters who had been in the jungle were present, more of them than usual, drawn in by whatever had passed between the people in the engagement, and was now seeking the outlet of shared vocabulary. "Today," Mary said, "we hunted. Together." "Together," the young man said. "We faced danger." "Danger," he said. "We protected each other." She looked at him. "We help." "We help," he said. He looked at the assembled tribe. He used the word actively, addressing his people. "We help," he pointed between the tribe and the Parkers. "Together, we help." Several tribe members produced it. The older man said it with the deliberate gravity that had characterized every English word he had learned, as if each one was being filed in a specific place, for a specific future use that he had already determined. "Help," he said. Then he looked at Amin Parker. He said something in his own language. Then, below it, the English word he had for the concept his language had just expressed. "Strong heart," he said. The two English words, not fully formed yet, as a compound, the space between them still present, had the quality of something in the process of being named. The young man had been building this, apparently, since the jungle, since the moment the predators had locked their attention on the smallest person in the formation, and that person had stood in the centre of it and been what he had always been. Mary looked at Amin. He looked at the young man. "Strong heart," the young man said again. He pointed at Amin. "Strong heart," Amin said. He said it without correction and without modification. It was accurate. It was what it was. The young man nodded, filed. The private Japanese lesson. After the tribe slept, the family assembled at the territory's northern perimeter. Amin looked at each of them. "Today worked," he said, in Japanese. The bilingual system held. English for the tribe, Japanese for the family, both operating simultaneously without the tribe registering the second language. "The young man is aware we coordinated with sounds he couldn't understand," Amir said. His Japanese was more architectural than conversational. Correct, structured. The specific quality of a language spoken by someone who thinks in systems rather than speech. He is intelligent enough to notice that our formation adjustments preceded audible English commands during the engagement. He's filing it. "As what?" Princess asked. "As something he doesn't have a word for yet," Amir said, "which is the correct outcome. Mystery is better than explanation." "Will it stay mystery?" Amira asked. "If we're consistent," Amin said. He looked at the family. "Let's be consistent," he said. Then he produced the first phrase of the evening lesson. "Lian Shi," he said. Ren-Kei. Coordination. "Lian Si," the family repeated. "Sin Lai," he said. Shinrai. Trust. Sin Lai. Soru, he said. Mamoru. Protect. Shoru. He ran through the evening's vocabulary, words drawn from the day's experience, from the things that had happened in the jungle that now needed names in the private language. Coordination. Trust. Protect. Formation. The specific Japanese verbs for the techniques they had used. The redirect, the drive, the anchor. Prince Parker, who had been struggling with Shoru's pronunciation, the MO sound landing slightly too forward in his mouth, tried it a fourth time. It landed correctly. He said nothing. He simply moved to the next word. Amin watched him. Something moved through Amin Parker's expression that was not praise, and not surprise, and was not any of the emotional categories that had obvious names. It was quieter than all of those. The particular quality of a son watching his father do something difficult, with the specific stubbornness that had always been the best version of that stubbornness, directed not at resistance but at correction. He moved on. The lesson ran for 40 minutes. By its end, the family had added 11 words and 3 conjugation patterns to the private vocabulary that now numbered in the hundreds. The architecture of a language was assembling itself, not in the quick study way of survival phrases, but in the deep way of a language that was becoming part of the body, rather than a tool the body was learning to use. Cassandra produced a spontaneous sentence, not repeating an example, not responding to a prompt. A construction that had assembled itself from the day's vocabulary and the grammar of the past week's lessons, and had arrived, complete, as something she wanted to say. "Jinri, birahasi no fu o eranda," she said. "Kyu, karera wachichi wo eranda." Today, they chose my father. She said it quietly, looking at nothing specific, at the space between the jungle and the fire, where the darkness of the prehistoric night lived. Today, they chose my father, as they will always choose him, because he is what he is, and what he is cannot be changed by where we are, or when we are, or what has been taken from us. He is still that. He will always be that. Amin heard it. He did not respond to it in Japanese. He did not respond to it in English. He simply looked at his daughter across the fire circle, the way a parent looks at a child who has said something true, the way a teacher looks at a student who has stopped learning and started knowing, The way the man that Cassandra Brown had been protecting in the jungle today looked at the woman who had stepped in front of him, without being asked, without hesitation, with everything she was, because she had decided that this was where she needed to be, and she had been right. The fire burned. The feathered dinosaur was pressed against Mary's side.
The jungle breathed its ancient, continuous breath, and somewhere in the prehistoric dark, 3 Allosaurus carried their assessment of the hunting formation back into the deep jungle, carrying with them the specific information about the human group that their threat assessment systems had logged and would not release. They coordinate. They protect the center. They defer to the one who cannot be read as prey, the one who stands like something at the top of its category. The one who is called by the humans in the formation Strong Heart. The T-Rex's distant circuit continued its rounds. Everything was learning, and in the learning, everything was preparing for what was coming. End of episode 5, The Hunt That Chose Him. 生存の言語第5話、彼を選んだ狩り。T-Rex がタノフミでフィオーテ選んだから参加を、部族はフートン狩りを提案した。洞窟熟秘の地図に狩りの体系を描き、パーカー・メアリーに参加を求めた。メアリーは絵を見てからパーカー・アミンを見た。彼は静かにうずいた。We come. 私たちは行く。とメアリーは答えた。第1幕、夜明け前。パーカー・アミンは家族を川へ連れて行き、秘密の日本語授業を行った。今日の目的は明確だった。狩りの最中、家族は日本語で連携し、部族には英語だけを見せる。緊急時は日本語の命令を優先するとアミンは言った。家族は重要な単語を復習した。待ち伏せ、包囲、引きつける、守る。メアリーはそれらの意味を理解しながら静かにうぞいた。帰還後、公開の英語授業が始まった。hunt、狩り、together、一緒に部族は言葉を繰り返した。洞窟には新しいジェスチャーを示した。チェンバース・アメアはそれを全身の意味だと分析し、メアリーは英語を与えた。アドバンス、全身。洞窟女は初めてその言葉を発した。第2幕、狩りの体系はジャングルへ進んだ。洞窟女が先導し、部族とパーカー家族は自然に統合された。パーカー・アミンは体系の弱点となる左中央を埋めた。メアリーは移動する中心。ブラウン・カサンドラとパーカー・プリンセスは彼女の両側を兄弟は側面。チェンバース・アメアは後方分析。パーカー・ラシームは柔軟な位置。パーカー・プリンスは後へ羽のある恐竜はメアリーの側を歩いた。やがて洞窟女が足跡を発見する。3頭、大型捕食者。体型は再編成された。獲物を発見したその瞬間、石灰岩の高台から3頭のアロサウルスが襲いかかった。アロサウルスたちは体型全体を観察した部族、兄弟、カサンドラ、プリンス、メアリー、そして最後にパーカー・アミン。その瞬間、ラプター、スピノサウルス、T-Rex の時と同じことが起きた。捕食者は彼を選んだ。静けさ、姿勢、均衡、小物ではない何か。リーダーのアロサウルスは、アミンを主脅威として認識した。メアリーは危険を読み取った。逃げろ、日本語だった。家族は即座に。カサンドラは隙間を埋めた。プリンセスは偶翼を支えた。ラシームは軌道を広げた。四兄弟は回転した。アメアは高所へ。アミンは中央へ歩いた。アロサウルスが突進する。アミンは最後の瞬間に身をかわし、力を利用して捕食者を石灰岩へ叩きつけた。カサンドラは別のアロサウルスを迎撃し、連続打撃で交代させた。プリンセスは部族への攻撃を止め、洞窟ノンと連携して側面から圧力をかけた。アメアは高所から叫ぶ。リードはまたパーカー・アミンを狙う！メアリーは即座に判断した。引きつけてラシームは予測不能な動きでアロサウルスの注意をそらした。その隙にアミンが前進する。ボー。全身の力を一点へ集中させる。大きくよろめいた。続いて兄弟が壁となり本制させる。リードのアロサウルスは停止した。体型を見る。家族を見る。そしてアミンを見る。静かで揺るがない存在。やがて決断した。撤退、3頭すべてがジャングルへ消えていった。狩りは失敗した。しかし別の何かが成功した。若い男はすべてを見ていた。捕食者が誰を選び、誰を恐れたのかを 彼はメアリーの隣へ来る。アミンを見つめる。何かを自分の言葉で語る。メアリーは答えた。Yes! はい！若い毒はぞいた。重要な何かが確認された。第3幕。キロ、洞窟女は初めてメアリーの隣を歩いた。対等な位置で、領域へ戻ると、夕方の英語授業が始まった。We hunted をした。Together 一緒に。We help。部族は繰り返した。そして、若い男はアミンを見た。Strong heart 強いよはそう呼んだ。アミンは修正しなかった。Strong heart 若い男は覗いた。名前は定着した。その夜、秘密の日本語授業が行われた。信頼、守る、家族は繰り返した。カサンドラは自発的に日本語の文を作った。今日、彼らは私の父を選んだ。捕食者たちは常に彼を選ぶ。なぜなら彼は何であるかを変えないからだ。場所が変わっても、時代が変わっても、失われたものがあっても、彼は彼のままだ。アミンは娘を見た。真実を理解した生徒を見る教師のように、成長した娘を見る父のように、火は燃え続けた。羽のある恐竜はメアリーの側にいた。ジャングルは古代の息を続けた。そして遠くの闇の中で、3頭のアロサウルスは人間たちについて学んだことを運んでいた。彼らは連携する。中央を守る。獣として読めないものに従う。頂点に立つ存在のように振る舞うものに、人間たちがストロングハーコと呼ぶものに、T レックスは今も巡回を続けていた。すべてが学んでいた。そして学びながら来るべきものに備えていた。第5話終わり。彼を選んだ狩り。